Welcome back, folks, to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content that I watch on the WWE Network. For the past couple weeks, we've been talking about Holy Foley. We've done Breaking Ground before, Total Divas, WWE, Table for Three, Unfiltered, several different shows of the, various varieties. Today, I thought I'd talk about a show that I was going to review a couple weeks back. Didn't have the time, had the time to watch it a couple days back. Really thoroughly enjoyed it, watching it back for a second time. It is WWE 24, Seth Rollins, Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim. That aired back on May 30th, 2016, only 8 days out from Rollins' return at Extreme Rules, which I was there for. Fucking amazing moment, I'll tell you that right now. But I've been on a big Rollins binge for whatever reason, like for the past week and a half. I've always been a big Rollins fan, but I go through like these phases like every few weeks where I'll get on this big binge for a certain wrestler, whether it be like a Bobby Roode back in November for me, or like an AJ Styles. This past week, for whatever reason, it was Seth Rollins, and I said to myself, I gotta rewatch that fucking 24 special on Rollins. And it's hard to say whether it's the best one they've ever done. I mean, I've talked about it before here on the channel. I know RJ and I reviewed it for, I think Wrestle Rant Radio, or we previewed it or something like that a while ago, right after it aired a couple months back, or rather in May. It feels like yesterday, but it's been almost 8-9 months at this point. But every 24 special is pretty damn great. I hope to review each and every one at some point right here for WWE Network and Chill. Whether it be, the WrestleMania 32 one, or actually I think I have talked about one of the 24 specials before, TakeOver Brooklyn 1, which I did review here for WWE Network and Chill over the summer. So I have talked about one before, but whether it be WrestleMania 31, 32, thank you Daniel Bryan, the Women's Evolution they did over the summer, I think was the latest one. It's odd to think it's been that long since they produced one of these specials, but hey, I'll take one every few months because they're always really, really well done. This was no exception. So obviously by the title, you can pretty much tell. Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim, focusing on the in-ring return of Seth Rollins after he went down with an injury in November of 2015 during his lengthy reign as WWE World Champion. So the special opens up with clips and some footage of Rollins boarding the bus at Extreme Rules at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Like I said, I was there. It's so funny, too, because I remember when RJ and I and his girlfriend Molly, we all arrived there, and we went out to look for a McDonald's. There wasn't one in the area for whatever reason. A very sketchy area. I apologize to any natives of New Jersey, but if you live there, then you probably know firsthand. It's a very sketchy area, at least in Newark anyway. At least in Newark. So anyway, we're walking by the arena, and we walked past the bus, and I said, wouldn't it be amazing if Seth Rollins was sitting in that bus right now? And just kind of busting the balls and busting the chops of RJ, who is a huge Rollins fan, as I am as well, even a bigger Rollins fan than I am. But little did we know, I don't know if it was that exact same bus, of course, but he was hiding out in a bus before the pay-per-view, before eventually returning later on that night after the main event in an amazing moment. But yeah, we get some footage of that before we get the footage of his injury itself. I know you've seen it probably a million times. He suffered the knee injury in a live event match with Kane overseas in early November 2015 during his reign as WWE World Champion. So he didn't really feel, he felt kind of bit of a pain, like a sharp pain in his knee during the match after doing a buckle bomb, or not a buckle bomb. He did a power bomb to Kane. His knee gave out, and while doing a power bomb through a table, that's what the spot was. He didn't really think too much of it until he got back to the back after the match, before he was told by doctors that he had tore his ACL, his MCL, and his meniscus. That fucking sucks. Then the doctor says he might be out upwards of 6 months. We get footage of the surgery, which went really well, but people were hoping that he'd be back for WrestleMania. Rollins hoped he'd be back by WrestleMania, so I'll get back to that a little bit later on. But we get this amazing video package, and I love this fucking song, Throne. I almost said Thorn. That's Shane Thorne from NXT. Throne by Bring Me the Horizon, the theme for NXT TakeOver Respect from October of 2015. Great song. Fit Rollins to a T. So we get a video package of Rollins and the highlights that he had throughout 2015 as WWE Champion in his many matches with Brock Lesnar, with Dean Ambrose, with John Cena, with Randy Orton, winning the main event of WrestleMania and becoming the WWE Champion after cashing in Money in the Bank. All those amazing things. It's really incredible. So we get that amazing video package featuring Rollins going from that to then having to sit on the sidelines with this awful injury with the knee, and he's going to have to sit out for at least 6 months at a time rehabbing this knee injury. And then we get comments from Rollins talking about how Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim were pretty much the first 3 words that came to mind after he got hurt. And he posted something to Twitter about it, I remember. Maybe not immediately after he got hurt, or maybe not Twitter, maybe it was Instagram, or both. Like with a picture of him hanging over the ropes, I think the night that he got hurt, with Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim. I thought someone created that for him, not Rollins. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, that's kind of where those 3 words derived from. Little would we know that it would become the title of this special, of his new t-shirt, and so on and so forth. Really kind of a mantra that fit Rollins to a T. But we get, highlights of the recovery process. It obviously takes an emotional toll on Seth Rollins for as much hard work as he put in throughout 2015. And the physical toll is one thing going through the recovery process, but you got to put yourself in this guy's shoes. He was working hard. He was working and headlining every single fucking show for every day of the year out of 2015 as its world champion. And then in an instant, it's all gone. And then he's sitting on the sidelines for 6 months rehabbing this injury. So you can't blame the guy for the emotional toll it takes on him. He says the whole process is slow, but he does get advice from Sami Zayn, who says you may not want to hear this now, but it's going to get better, and it just takes time. And Sami Zayn knows. I mean, he got hurt at the peak of his popularity in 2015, coming off his match with John Cena on Raw. Actually, he got hurt before the match with John Cena on Raw. That was supposed to kind of jumpstart his main roster run. Obviously, that did end up happening a little under a year later, but it was supposed to happen a lot earlier than it did before he got hurt. So he would know better than anyone in terms of sitting on the sidelines for an extended period of time with an injury. So that really sucked for Sami too. But the two obviously have history from Ring of Honor and the independent scene and the like and whatnot. So no one would know Seth Rollins and what he's going through better than Sami Zayn. But on the bright side, though, he does enjoy being home. We get clips of Rollins with his friends, eating pizza, all that other great stuff, playing video games, playing 2K17, not the wrestling game, the football game, and everything else. So he enjoys being home after being on the road for pretty much the entirety of 2015. But he stays in Iowa where his family is. He talks about growing up in Buffalo, Iowa, where he grew up. And like I said, we get highlights of his family, of him eating pizza, playing video games. He's got a dog. I think he was still dating his girlfriend at this time. I'm not exactly sure. But regardless, though, we do see all those, at least the bright side of what Rollins is going through at the time that he suffered this injury in late 2015, early 2016. Then they kind of go backwards and show Rollins' upbringing and growing up and with wrestling, sports, that he was pretty much good at everything that he played, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, and then eventually wrestling, which he got into with his friends. And a lot like the CM Punks of the world and the Jeff Hardys and the Matt Hardys, the Hardy Boys, and people of that nature, started up his own wrestling federation as a kid, Backyard Wrestling, which is comical considering that WWE pushes the narrative that you should not try this at home, yet they're showing various highlights of Rollins doing it with his friends in his backyard. But he was damn good at it too. At only 18, 19 years old, this guy had a whole federation. They talk about how they put on a show for their local firefighting department, their local fire department, and raised a whole bunch of money for a certain cause or something like that, because he was really fucking good at it, as well as his friends. So there were some positives to what he was doing. And he got a trampoline at the age of 14, and you get all these highlights, like these home videos on this shitty-ass camera of him doing tricks at the age of 14, 15, 16 of shit I have not seen anywhere else. So you knew this guy was bound for big things, beyond the age, his teenage years and the age of 14 and whatnot. Then we get a bit of a video with Seth Rollins downstairs in a basement, I think, of the old home that he grew up in. Just kind of where all his thoughts and ideas came from, and in giving birth to this wrestling federation. And he tells a funny story about Rob Van Dam, how he was one of his favorite wrestlers growing up, in addition to his friends, and how he kind of stole a shirt from him at a local wrestling show. He later told RVD that, like, when they eventually, they've crossed paths in the ring several times over the course of 2014, so they know each other pretty well, so that was pretty funny. And Rob Van Dam is like the 90s version of Seth Rollins anyway, so it's funny to kind of make that comparison, and that he idolized him growing up. But the parents obviously come on and they say that they were very accepting of Seth following his dreams to become a wrestler. They attended all of his local matches, including even his grandfather, who was in attendance for a match. And I don't know if his grandfather was a fan or not of the business, but they were in attendance for a match that Rollins had a local show. I think they're in Iowa, because he said he went. I don't know if they would travel that far to see him wrestle, but they said they had a show at like a an armory or something like that with Seth Rollins at the age of 19 in 2006 against AJ Styles, which to me blows my mind just because by that point, AJ, it was pretty much an established name in TNA, a former NWA World Champion. He had been in TNA for 4 years, and before that, WCW. So to think that he had been wrestling in an armory against a 19-year-old Seth Rollins blows my mind. But then again, we see that kind of thing we kind of see that kind of thing all the time these days with like Northeast Wrestling, promotions like that and whatnot. So it's really not that too much of a stretch to say that an established wrestler like an AJ Styles, while working for TNA, was wrestling 18, 19-year-olds in armories and whatnot. But the grandfather of Rollins says that was the best wrestling match he's ever seen, and he wasn't wrong. You get a few highlights, and I hope they put that matchup somewhere. I don't know if it's on YouTube or anything, but it'd be sick if we got it on the network at some point. And I'll talk about the documentary that they'll probably be making for Rollins later on this year in 2017. And hopefully this match is on there because that'd be fucking amazing if we could see it in full. But even AJ puts him over, and AJ realizes that Rollins idolized him growing up. He buys him dinner the next night. So that was kind of a thing, kind of like passing it along that Rollins would later do for other people that grew up watching him kind of model their respective careers after him. So that was kind of a cool thing. And I don't think we've done or have seen Rollins versus Styles since, at least, especially not in WWE, obviously, but hopefully at some point, I think those two guys could have a great feud/match, an amazing match if done right. But at any rate, then we transition from there to his career in Ring of Honor, who I don't know if they mentioned by name or not. They sure as hell show, courtesy of Ring of Honor, like footage from Ring of Honor, him against Austin Aries, Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen. We get comments from all those guys with the exception of Daniel Bryan. I think at the time they were putting this together, Daniel Bryan was not on the road to the company, so it's not all that surprising they can't get comments from him. But yeah, we transition from his career in Ring of Honor, and then he talks about Daniel Bryan's retirement, which Seth Rollins was out for. He was unable to attend on Raw back in February of 2016 because he was still rehabbing his injury. And he talks about not only being close with Daniel, just because they kind of grew up and were cut from the same cloth on the independent scene, but he wrestles a very similar style, a very risky, very high-risk aerial maneuver-esque style. And the fact that anything could go wrong at any second, as was proven with the initial injury he suffered in late 2015. So the same thing could happen with him as it did with Daniel Bryan, that Daniel Bryan, or Seth Rollins rather, a lot like Daniel Bryan, could retire at any moment. So he kind of takes, sadden in that respect. And with Daniel Bryan's retirement, in addition to the fact they were also very good friends. And I think Seth has a few comments on the 24 special they put out for Bryan, the thank you special, right after Bryan's retirement last year. So hopefully I can watch that back and reminisce on that at some point. I can't remember exactly, but we transitioned from that to him training at the PC, or maybe not even training, just kind of going in for a checkup. He confides in Cesaro because Cesaro at that time, I think, got hurt literally like mere weeks after Rollins did. And he didn't have a knee injury, but he did have a shoulder surgery and shoulder injury. So he was out for a couple months as well, almost as long as Rollins was. He got injured in mid-November, came back in April. Rollins got injured in early November and came back in late May. So the time span really wasn't that far off. But they were good friends anyway in Ring of Honor, so it's not really, again, too much of a stretch to say they were good friends throughout the recovery process for both guys. Then he has a test. I forgot what they called it, but it's a strength and endurance test measured to measure and for one leg. That where strength and endurance is measured in one leg in a single test. And he passes with flying colors. It looks extremely difficult, but he passes. And then John Cena tells him, who was also injured, another guy who was injured at that time, along with Randy Orton. There was a lot of fucking people that were out, like late 2015, early 2016. But Cena says that he had told Seth Rollins that you're one of the best guys that we have on this roster. It's better to not risk it and being back in time for WrestleMania 32. Because you're going to have a million WrestleMania moments. You're probably going to be around for WrestleMania 42. You're only 29 years old. Don't risk it. Don't rush your injury. Take your time in coming back. And he's right. I mean, Cena did appear at WrestleMania, albeit in a non-wrestling role. And just an awful segment of The Rock, and that's a side note. But anyway, I feel like with Seth Rollins, I think they were wise in holding him off until when he did come back in the spring. And obviously for Rollins, It takes an emotional toll. It's hard on him just because he headlined the show in 2015, walked out of WrestleMania 31, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. A year later, isn't even on the show. So obviously it's heartbreaking. It's depressing for him. It's humbling, he admits, but depressing, but very heartbreaking. He goes to Mania anyway. That's obviously the last place he wants to be, but he goes to take over Dallas, attends backstage, watches the matches from like the producer's room, whatever, meets up with Vince, meets up with Triple H. He does a signing at Access. And, he's very cool to the fans, but like I said, it seems like, especially after people ask you, like, when the fuck he coming back, that's the last place that he wants to be. So that really isn't all that surprising. And people are speculating that he'll be back on Raw, which he obviously was not. RJ thought he'd be back on Raw, which, again, he was not. But anyway, so he trains to the PC for an in-ring return, takes some bumps, the standard process. And needless to say, he was scared to land on his knee because the finisher that he had at that time and still has now, and hopefully for not much longer, is the pedigree, which you land directly on your knee. The same knee that he injured in the process only a couple months earlier. So you can't really blame the guy for wanting to be, very skeptical and landing on that knee when doing the pedigree. So it's really not all that surprising. But again, he passes with flying colors. He just says, fuck it, like literally fuck it, lands on the knee, nothing happens, and he's fine. So he continues to do it, and it seems like he's okay. He delivers it to Ty Dillinger, and they clear him. I think the day that he came back at Extreme Rules, which, like I said, I was there for, just an absolutely incredible moment. The place goes crazy. Rollins, obviously, a lot like anyone else, nervous about the reaction that he was going to get when he came through that curtain. But after 195 days of sitting on the sidelines with that knee injury, he comes back that night in Newark, New Jersey, the Prudential Center, at Extreme Rules, right after that amazing match, the phenomenal match, pun intended, between AJ Styles and Roman Reigns for the WWE title. And like I said, just the raucous reaction that he received that night was just anything I had not heard in a long time. Just being there, listening to it back on the network, the commentary, watching it back on this special, the various camera angles that they showed of it. And it said, like, he said to him that it felt like WrestleMania all over again, like WrestleMania 31, running down that ramp to the ring, laying out Roman Reigns, a lot like he did almost at WrestleMania 31 a year prior. So an amazing 360 for Seth Rollins, going from being injured or really 180 rather, going from being injured to coming back and a triumphant return at Extreme Rules, then setting his sights on regaining the WWE title. He said he had two goals when he got hurt: to be back in time for WrestleMania, which he failed, which he was not happy about that. Very frustrating, he says several times. And two, to be back and win back the WWE title, which he ended up doing. Like I said, this came out in May of 2016, May 30th to be exact, I think Memorial Day. And then he ended up winning the championship back about a month later at Money in the Bank. Albeit for like a minute or so before Dean Ambrose won it from Rollins, but he still ended up winning it back. And I still, to this day, they didn't really cover it in the special, but after watching this special, after everything they did for Rollins, the amazing pop, the amazing reaction that he got on that show when he came back, it still blows my mind all these months later they did not immediately transition him into a babyface role. Because obviously, as great of a heel as he was, he will be destined to be a babyface forever, just based off his moveset, natural charisma, his likability, etc., etc. So why they didn't speed that process up? Because to me, if Finn Balor doesn't get hurt after SummerSlam, Rollins would still be a heel right now until Triple H comes back to turn on him to set that match forward to WrestleMania 33. So I know they kind of sped it up a little bit because Balor got hurt. This is a whole other argument for another day. But bottom line being, after this special got finished, two things went through my mind. One, that it was one of, if not the best, 24 special the company ever did, which is hard to say because all the 24 specials are fucking great. But two, that why he wasn't a babyface from the get-go when he came back. Because he did turn, like I said, a couple months later, but it didn't have the same effect, and he's been popular. Like, people like Rollins. He gets positive reaction when he comes out now. But it's just not, he doesn't have that same momentum that he did coming out of this special, coming out of the return in Extreme Rules. So that's really just something to kind of reminisce on from the spring of 2015 or 2016 rather. But that is Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim, the latest or the second to last 24 special WWE did. The last one they did, I think, was the Women's Evolution one. Another great, excellent special you should check out on the network. I think they have about 10 in total. Like I said, TakeOver Brooklyn, which I talked about a year ago. WrestleMania 31, 32, They have, I think, a Roman Reigns one they put out after WrestleMania, which was also pretty good from what I remember, maybe before Mania. I don't recall exactly. They have a Booker T one. So they have a lot of good 24 specials. I want to watch the rest of them. I've seen all of them before. I want to watch them back. I hadn't seen this one since it initially aired a year ago, so I want to watch that back at some point. But at any rate, though, it's a great special. Check it out as we approach the road to WrestleMania 33. Hopefully, Rollins and Triple H does indeed come to fruition at the show of shows in April. So that being said, guys, always appreciate the support. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Next Monday, I'll probably be talking about, like I said, anything that I really just am in the mood to watch on the network, whether it be a 24 special, I know Holy Foley just came out last night at the Rumble, so check out the rest of that show. Actually, not really, because the show sucks, but I might watch the rest of it just to get some 2 cents on it. Maybe I've already watched Breaking Ground. There's a lot of different, like I said, a lot of different options. There's more Table for 3 I could watch. Unfiltered's great. So like I said, there's a lot of content to watch from the network. Ride along, watch it all. All the original content on the network is great. But until next time, guys, I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.